Give him a warm round of applause. Warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. I came to Brooklyn early in the day to make an appraisal of the work of a distinguished artist that I've known for 50 years. And he was somewhat despondent because he was a friend of the radical years of the Depression. The fine Caribbean artist, and we were together in those Depression years, and when we were all so hopeful, under a great teacher, Willis N. Huggins, who allegedly jumped off George Washington Bridge out of frustration. And because we loved him, we didn't believe it. We believed it was foul play. That's not the point I'm driving toward. His point to me, because I came over to appraise his artwork, and he's one of our major unrecognized artists, is what was it all about? What did we do it for? 2 generations of struggle and wishing and fighting to face a generation of young people who don't seem to care, and older people who don't seem to care and don't seem to know. We started the Harlem History Club. We was with an activist called Sufi, who in Chicago was named Reverend Cruikshank, and who really started the buy black and don't buy or you can't work campaign. And we started the whole concept of black studies 2 generations before this young generation started it, or thought about it. We were in the river-to-river picket line. We remember days in the Harlem community where blacks could not even clerk on 125th Street, 10-cent stores on 125th Street, where blacks couldn't even have jobs or drive buses. In New York City, we were on picket lines, not trying to chase, not trying to impregnate every little girl we met. And we had dignity and respect, and had youth, and now Reed is old and worn and barely got enough strength to go up and down the stairs in his own home, and where's it all went and what was it all for? And we're facing a generation who's asking questions about a cop-out generation that's not delivering anything. We never heard of crack, and we didn't know what marijuana looked like or smelled like. This is a dialogue between 2 men 50 years later. He came out of the Caribbean, I came out of the South. Both poor, committed to the salvation of our own people. Both young Garveyites, trying to see what we could do to redeem our own people. Now we're asking, what was it all for? We put it on the line. What kind of work did we do? scrubbing floors, porters, elevator operators in hotels, taking the insults, surviving however we could. Now 50 years later, we meet. Here's a former fine artist, former art director in a major advertising agency. His family grown and gone. His wives gone. He's had two, I've had two. Children gone, mine about gone. None of his wives thoroughly understood what his life was about, none of mine either. We could have done a whole lot of things with our lives. We could have said yes to the right people. Both of us could have been rich, if that's what we wanted. We could have copped out, walked down Easy Street. We could have been the Cadillac route, the glamour route. We went down the commitment route, trying to save a people.
Amen.
Now what's this got to do with the speech? Probably nothing. Really, probably everything and nothing. 50 years is a long time in the life of two people. When you've known when you've known a person 50 years and you meet and start a dialogue, say, what was it all about? What did we two people do with our lives? We were committed to our people. We served well. We served honestly. Neither one of us are rich or poor. And he was the irony of it. Both of us had a brownstone house. About the same type of brownstone house, about the same plumbing problems. But the main thing is what have we done with these last 50 years? What have we seen? We've seen two generations parade before us. What have they learned? What have they committed to? We started out in the active years, the Italian-Ethiopian War. We thought Africa would be liberated by now. We've seen it go to the door of liberation and literally turn around or be turned around. We've seen the two branches of the African world, Afro-American, Caribbean, and Africa, get to the brink of liberation and let itself be turned around. Literally, we've seen Garvey betrayed.
Yes.
We've seen him betrayed by his own people. We've seen his dream turned around. And tragically, in his own country, a people who will elect a Siaga, producer Marcus Garvey, and elect a Siaga, a white man from Boston, have problems. Call him a Lebanese if you want to. This is a job artist and a con man who came to Jamaica to be elected. Learn Jamaican folklore, learn Jamaican dialogue, studied Jamaicanese, studied the politics of Jamaica, studied the folklore and the ways of the Jamaican people, jived his way into the politics, and got elected. No black people, their folk ways, their color ways, their color preferences, and rolled in on their prejudices. Knew that Jamaica was one of the most color stratified islands in the Caribbean. England had made it so. All of this has to do with something. If Marcus Garvey were alive today and ran for election in Jamaica, he would lose. If Marcus Garvey were alive today and ran for election in Bedford-Stuyvesant, he would win. Tell you something about the temperament of the Caribbean mentality at home and the Caribbean mentality away from home. A few years ago, Caribbean scholar Keith Henry wrote an article for me when I was editor of Freedom Ways called Tigers Abroad and Meek Moses at Home. I wouldn't publish it. I said it's a good article and it's absolutely honest. But if I publish it, somebody will have my head. It's honest, it's true. So why don't you publish it? See, it reveals something that none of us are ready to face. And this summer, last summer, in Barbados, on an intellectual tour, I delivered a lecture called The Caribbean Mind Away from Home, dealing with the fact that the finest minds that the Caribbeans ever produced never could function in the Caribbean. Marcus Garvey, and that the best minds who attempted to function in the Caribbean were killed in the Caribbean. The last example was the great Walter Rodney, yes, killed in the Caribbean. And their finest minds function outside of the Caribbean, and that Black America became the beneficiary of some of these finest minds, starting with Prince Hall, who built the Black Masons. And there, in Barbados, one evening, before I made the speech, I was speaking to an aristocratic woman, and I said that tomorrow I will speak on the Caribbean mind away from home, and I will start with Prince Hall, and I will end with George Lamon. And she jumped as though I had said something about her mother that was unpleasant. She said, "You dare mention the name of George Lamon on this island?" I said, "He's only the finest literary figure Barbados has ever produced." She said, "That horrible man, he dared to say that tourism is horrorism." I said, "What else is it?" I said, "George Lamon is such a great writer. I was reading one of his novels, and he was describing rain. And he was describing it so graphically. When I finished reading the novel and started outside, I went upstairs and looked for a raincoat and quite forgot that the sun was shining." He made me feel that it was raining outside. That was greatness in writing. Then she said, "Why not V.S. Naipaul? he handles the English language so well. V.S. Naipaul is an East Indian who hates East Indians, West Indians, English, hates Indians, hates his own people, everybody else's people. Don't love nothing and nobody. But he handles the English language quite well. There is no humanity in anything he ever wrote. All right, now, let's start the lecture. Marcus Garvey is too important for delay. At first, in talking about Marcus Garvey, it would seem that I am talking away from the subject, but I will be talking directly on the subject all of the time. We need to place Marcus Garvey in proper focus. And to do this, we need to place the Caribbean people in proper focus. Therefore, we need to look at their here-ness in their now-ness. Since the election of Edward Seaga in Jamaica and the invasion of Grenada, there has been a major change in the Caribbean world and a change in an attitude toward Marcus Garvey. And one wonders if this change has made Marcus Garvey and his ideals safe among Caribbean people. One wonders if Marcus Garvey would be physically safe if he was alive today. He called for the unity and the redemption of the African world. We were not ready to listen then. There's wonder whether we are ready to listen now. He was not only ahead of his time, he was ahead of this time. There's an indication that the Caribbean people, in participation in the forthcoming Statue of Liberty 100th anniversary, might be missing the point. There is something at the present Schomburg collection called the immigration voluntary immigration, indicating that the Caribbean people came here voluntarily, separating them from the black Americans who came on slave ships. They're missing the boat because all blacks came out of Africa on slave ships. All right. The slave ship stopped in the Caribbean and dropped those off and continued to the United States and dropped some off. The fact that the Caribbeans came later is another point. And except for someone pointing a finger and said, I'll take that one instead of that one, any Caribbean could be a black American, and any black American could be a Caribbean. Amen. So no one needs celebrate and no one need to boast. All of us are victims of the same historical experience with variations. And no one need to boast or participate in the variation as though one is radically different from the other. The supreme test is this: can you pass the taxicab test? There was an argument in one of my classes at Hunter College between black Americans, Africans, and Caribbeans. And I told all of them, and I especially picked those with black faces, not brown or almost whites or yellows. I said, I want all of you to go down, and I want each one of you to count the number of cabs that pass you by before one stops. Don't open your mouth. I want to hear no accent. Just stand there and tell me how many cabs pass before one picks you up. 21 cabs on an average before anyone picked up any one of them. The Caribbean, the African, and the Afro-American. And when they came up, I said, I don't want to hear no damn argument about who came from what island, who came from Georgia, or who came from what part of Africa. You are all African people, and that damn bigoted cab driver is a better Pan-Africanist than all three of you. And once we understand that we belong to the same African family, no matter what island you came from, what part of Georgia you came from, or what part of Africa you came from. And that is the essential message that Marcus Garvey was trying to get across to you. One God, one aim, one destination. And when you can't understand that, you betray Marcus Garvey. And that is the essential message. All right, now, let us proceed. What we have to understand with those who are participating in the separate charade around the Statue of Liberty that hasn't got a damn thing to do with any of us, that a decade after the arrival of the Statue of Liberty was a decade of anti-liberty all over the world for African people everywhere. Let's take 1886 and let's take the decade after 1886 and look at it all over the world and see what that decade means in relationship. In Africa, 1886 was the end of the long colonial wars and the politics of exile. The Asante Wars was coming to a close. 1886, the British burned down or tried to burn down the city of Kumasi. 1885, they exiled the King Prempeh. Not only exiled him, but made him submit and forced him literally to kiss the shoes of the British governor along with his mother. Humiliated one of the most illustrious kings in all Africa. Around the other end of Africa, they had broken the last of the great Zulu kings of Africa were being exiled.